the launch conductor in mission control, we pause at this moment in our countdown to remember and honor the lives of each of the participants on the Celestis Memorial Spaceflight. Their presence on this flight signifies a commitment to the opening of the space frontier shared by all of us. We wish the friends and families present today and all those who are with us in spirit all over the world Godspeed, good luck, and our thanks for allowing us to share this very personal time with you today. Elsie out. 5 vehicles armed. 3, 2, 1, fire. Missile away.
And good evening, everyone. I'm Mark Lee. I'm the ambassador for Celestis, and welcome to another mission briefing, a monthly thing that we do to keep our families up to date on our upcoming missions, especially the ones that are nearer now than the ones that are further out. This is going to be a very, very important briefing, so if you have any family members who are not tuned into us at this moment, you might want to give them a call. Reach out to them, tell them come gather around the computer or however you're viewing this over YouTube and Facebook. We have a lot of things to talk about this evening and also have a very, very special guest. I think you will enjoy this gentleman. He's pretty cool to me. So as usual, I want to introduce to you my boss, CEO of Celestis Space Flights. Charles, how are you?
I'm well, Mark. Doing good. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year
to everybody.
Yes, hopefully for a better year, and you just coughed.
Yeah.
A better year than 21. This is 2022. So once again, welcome. If you have any questions, we do have a chat area here. And if there are any questions, no question is a dumb question, but if you have any questions, go into our chat room. Go ahead and type in what your question is during this broadcast, what you hear during the broadcast. If you have questions if you had questions you've been meaning to get to us previously, here's your chance to do this. We do have our full Celestis staff online with us. If we do not give you a verbal answer to this, that answer will be, or rather that question will be answered in our chat room or can be answered for you later on. Whether our Facebook page, you can call us directly. There's a number of ways that you can get in contact with us. So without any further ado, we're going to go ahead and start Charles off with our briefing. And then later on, we're going to introduce you to an incredible guest that you're going to want to hang around and watch. So Charles, what's going on, sir? What can we look forward to now?
Well, it's always great to be able to tell people about forthcoming missions. And 2022 is pretty exciting. We have 4 missions scheduled in the next 15 months. So it's a busy manifest that we have. I'm going to update each of those missions, and I think I'll go in reverse order to nearness in time, but it will give you a sense because in the next, as I say, 15 months, we'll launch one of each of our services. So whatever mission you've signed up for a loved one or for a DNA sample or whichever one you're interested in, all of those will be happening this year. So let me start. In the first quarter of next year is our Excelsior flight. That'll be our 21st mission. Wow. And it's going to Earth orbit on board a Spaceflight Inc. Sherpa carrier and launched on a Falcon 9 rocket from Cape Canaveral, Florida. So we don't have any additional data for that. typically, as we start getting 6 months out, we start getting a little more info, and then as you'll see with these other missions, it hits fairly rapidly after that. But that's our next Earth orbit mission. It's on the manifest and looking good for on-time launch. Then we have 2 missions scheduled in the middle of this year. The first will be our first Voyager service, which goes beyond the moon into interplanetary space and basically becomes a forever spacecraft. It's a very exciting mission. It's scheduled right now in June of next year, 2022. I'm going to do a little teaser and say in about 2 weeks, we'll be doing a big update on that mission with lots of information and more granularity as to schedule, launch vehicle, et cetera, et cetera. So if you can hold on for 2 weeks, we should have some big news the next time we get together. And of course, if you're a family member or someone with payload on the Voyager mission, we'll be directly communicating with you about Enterprise. Very excited about our other mid next year mission. We'll be landing on the surface of the moon on the Astrobotic Peregrine lander, and that's scheduled to launch on Vulcan Centaur rocket, ULA, United Launch Alliance, from Cape Canaveral, Florida, again currently scheduled for June of 2022. That's the only mission which is not open still for reservations. We closed those reservations. We shipped all of the payload to Astrobotic in January, and now we're just in the hurry up and wait mode until we get nearer to the actual launch date, when again we'll communicate directly with family members about all of the programs and accommodations we have for that mission. So that brings us to mission number 4, which is actually number 1 on the flight pad here, and that's our Aurora Flight. The Aurora Flight is our Earthrise suborbital service where we launch remains, DNA, and messages into space, where they experience, that's the word I'm looking for, a few minutes of microgravity and are returned to planet Earth, and we provide back to the client a flown artifact, a flown flight capsule as a permanent keepsake. That mission is currently scheduled for April 11th through the 13th. Actual launch date is the 13th. And that mission flies on an Up Aerospace Spaceloft XL rocket launching out of Spaceport America. We will set up so we typically conduct 3 days of mission programming, and we'll establish our headquarters hotel for Aurora at the Spring Hill Suites Marriott in Las Cruces, New Mexico. And that's where all the people that are attending will come to register and sign up for their attendance at the mission. So the sign up will be well in advance, but register for on-site registration there at the Spring Hill Suites Marriott. There are, I believe, still quite a few rooms available for that time frame right there at the Spring Hill Suites. There are lots of hotels and motels throughout Las Cruces. Unlike when we were headquartered in Truth or Consequences, when there were 2 hotels. There's several in Las Cruces. And so we're headquartering this mission in Las Cruces. And what does that mean? That means registration will occur on the 11th afternoon. Then on the 12th in the morning, there'll be buses that will take you on a launch pad tour, which is one of the coolest parts of the missions because we're able to get right up on the launch pad for right next to the vehicle that's housing our payload, and are personally briefed by the founder and the chief operator of the mission of Up Aerospace, Jerry Larson. That's always a very popular event. You really get to see modern rocketry, which is this amazing combination of pretty low tech and pretty high tech on display at that tour. Then in the afternoon of the 12th, we will gather at the Las Cruces Convention Center for our memorial service and post-service reception. And we'll be announcing more about that as well, but that will be the afternoon of the 12th. And then early in the morning on the 13th, we will leave for viewing the launch from Spaceport America. And that usually almost always gets us back to the hotel by checkout time, noon, and everyone can disperse at that point. So it's an exciting program. If you didn't get all this down or you only listened to part of it, don't worry. If you're a participant, we will be communicating with you via email, I believe as soon as tomorrow. We will be asking you all to pre-register with us. The process of attending the launch, the launch is essentially in the middle of nowhere, but it's, $250 million dumped on the middle of nowhere. So it's an amazing sight, but private cars aren't allowed. And so the only way to get to and from that is through our chartered buses. And we'll need everyone to register to attend all of the activities. We have 3 options for people on how they may wish to attend. Any option that includes viewing the launch, there'll be a charge associated with, and we'll establish that. In the past, it's been around $125, $150 per person for transportation both days, as well as other things. We don't have that number yet, but we will have it by the time we start offering tickets. The attendance at the memorial service is free. It's included in everything that we do. So what I wanted to emphasize is that right now we're asking you to pre-register with us. It helps us out to know about how many people are coming. And I understand, and pre-registering doesn't mean you're committing to anything. And you'll see when you go to registration, ultimately the cancellation policies and all of the things you would expect to see. But right now, we're just asking you to go to events.celestis.com/Aurora Flight launch. And that's one word, but there are 3 caps: Cap A, Cap F, Cap L. And let us know that you're planning on attending. It helps us scale and plan for how many folks are coming. The last thing I'll say is that, and I don't think I need to say this, but of course this is all and completely COVID dependent. And our policy will be that for attending our events, there'll be masked events indoors. That's the current law in New Mexico. We will require either proof of vaccination or a 72-hour test, not a quickie test, but a regular test. We'll spell out what that is. And in general, we're going to follow CDC guidelines. But I do expect that we'll be able to host as many people as want to come to the launch. And right now, it's somewhere between 150 and 250 guests that we're planning for. But if you would pre-register at that number, then it will just be helpful to us. And I know everybody who's attending wants to make it as easy on us because that means they'll have a great experience, which we always provide. All right, I think I'll stop there, Mark. If you're a primary contact and have loved ones on the mission, you get an email, I believe tomorrow, spelling out all of these details. Other people who have asked for mission updates but who aren't family members will get an email shortly thereafter. So we will continue to make all this information available, and as and if things change, we'll let people know. I'm sure we'll have at least one more Facebook Live event before Aurora, but it's getting pretty close. And we actually closed sales on Aurora today. So if you're out there going, oh no, I need to make the launch, call us, we'll work with you. But in fact, now we're booked and ready to fly. And we transitioned into an entirely different operation on site there in New Mexico. All right, Mark.
Okay. All right. Folks, if you have any questions, please go ahead and type in our chat room right now so we can go ahead and bring up your question, discuss your question. We want to make absolutely certain that you understand to a T everything that not only is required of you, but you want to have required from us. So make sure that you ask everything in the world that comes in your head. Everyone from this point on until the time we get into New Mexico, we will have answers for you. But I have a question for you on this one, Charles. Mm-hmm. Are you now saying that it is a good time, it is safe to book your refundable air tickets at this point?
That's a good way to ask the question. Yeah, we're making commitments now that are backed by deposits, most of which for us are refundable. And we recommend, if you're making travel plans, it's definitely time to book your hotel. All of them have very generous cancellation policies. And airlines, again, either refundable or re-queue-upable is always the way to go when you're trying to catch a launch. Now, as I've explained probably every time we talk, the launches out of New Mexico are really pretty close to on time routinely. It's a very simple launch vehicle, very simple launch operation, and not anywhere near the complexity level of payload as you see on orbital rockets and beyond. So what can cause a launch to be delayed? Well, up to at the last minute, the only thing that's ever happened to us in New Mexico was we got a 1-day delay because on launch day there was lightning striking around the pad, and you don't want to do that. But I believe 7 or 8 other missions have gone boom right on time because, again, the simplicity of the system. So what might cause the delay before, let's say up to maybe even 2 weeks before, it would be payload issues. NASA owns this launch. NASA solicits various people to provide experiments and applications on the launch, and they're in charge of gathering them all up and delivering them on time to the launcher. And if for some reason an international payload gets caught in customs or something like that, the payload, a critical payload, won't make the mission, NASA will probably postpone the mission. So that's really, but that would be, you know, at least 2 weeks in advance notice. So as I say, this one, it's always every possible thing has to work correctly for a space mission to go right, but there are a lot fewer things on these missions. So you can have a reasonably high confidence 30 days out of schedule. So it's a good question, Mark. Thank you for asking it.
No problem. And we are going on Up Aerospace with this launch.
Correct. Yeah.
In April. Okay. Yeah. They're a great bunch of folks. Very informative. They literally tell you what happens right down to mission control. They explain how they literally launched the rocket. It is a very, very incredible experience to have. Have a question here from Kim. Will your buses have air circulation or HEPA filters? Interesting.
Don't know the answer to that. Honestly, we've not yet finalized the bus contract. There is only one bus service that Spaceport America allows to be used there, and so we won't be shopping for that service. Now, they did haul hundreds of visitors in for Branson's launch a few months back, so I know they operated during COVID, but I don't know. It's a good question, and I don't have an answer for you on that.
Yeah, that's a new one on me. In all honesty, I haven't ridden any kind of bus transportation in a while, mainly because I've locked myself down, and I'm in Orlando, Florida, and with a lot of tour groups in this town. That's the first time I've ever heard. That's very interesting. I'm actually happy to have read that because, you know, masks are as good as the mask that you buy. So
right, you need apparently the research now says an N95 or a KN95 is what you're supposed to
being
be
pushed down. Sure,
yeah. So
sure.
We're very committed to not holding a super spreader event. For those of you that don't know, we canceled all of the on-site activities in our January launch from Florida and did only a webcast of that launch event for precisely these reasons. So we monitor closely and we'll communicate what we are able to do and what we aren't able to do.
Yeah. With the launch as close as it is, we're talking April. So I don't want the mindset to be there for saying, oh, we got plenty of time. No, please don't do that. Do this stuff now. Do it now. Book your hotel first, at least.
Well, and let us know first you're coming.
Yes. Well, oh yeah, do that first. Let us know you're coming. And go ahead and confirm with Celestis. Get on the list. Let everyone know who you are. Meet the nice people on the other end of the line, and then book your hotel and meet the nice people in person. Joe,
there's a lot of questions about, but I want to get to Kerry fairly quickly. So let me just move through them really quickly.
Go ahead.
That I see them. So I saw tentative date for the Enterprise launch in June 2022. Right. The answer is yes, June 2022. There's not a set date. It's not on the range calendar yet. This is a number provided by the launch provider. And again, we'll have more information about that here in a couple of weeks. I would also say, and this is not information from the launch services provider, we only publish what they use for their own launches. And having said all that, I won't be surprised if both Enterprise and possibly Luna move a little bit to the right. Just what happens with launches. And so, but we stay on it. We know what's going on.
Right.
The question from Robbie
Yeah,
from
up
Moving
top.
Down Payloads. The next, so the Luna 02, the Tranquility flight, scheduled to launch in June of 2022, also mid 2022, on the Vulcan Centaur mission. The next mission after that is the Destiny lunar mission, and we'll have some announcements to make on that probably in March. We'll have more specifics for that.
Okay.
And with that, I'd like to, our guest has patiently trod with us through all of our missions updates here. And I'd like to introduce my friend, Dr. Kerry Joels. Kerry is a national resource, national treasure. And I'm going to let him tell you a little bit about himself. But I will say, back in the 1970s, that dates us, there was a whole group of us crazy space people running around in the Washington, D.C. area. And we moved collectively many a mountain and created quite a bit of cool stuff as a result of that. And Kerry and I were running buddies during that period of the 70s in DC. And it's great to catch up with you and tell us what you've been up to and a little bit about who Dr. Kerry Joels is. And then we'll get into a little bit of your view of the world, of the universe, I guess.
Well, good evening, Mark, Charles. How are you
Hey.
doing? Good to meet everyone. It's hard to speak about yourself too much, but I will tell you that 32 years ago, Charles and I founded an institute called the Total Learning Research Institute, which has still been going and has done a number of national education programs, including shuttle simulators, lunar landers, Mars landers, and the development of a virtual Mars base so that we could do experiments on what life would be like and how do you simulate Mars studies. And the hallmark of all this has been we've been able to get students involved in all of these activities as well. So that's been kind of fun for us. In addition, of course, personally, I've worked at the White House twice, once for the Young Astronaut Program where I created the curriculum, and once out of the White House to help the Challenger families develop the first Challenger Center. So I've been in this business a long time. Charlie and I have done a lot of stuff together, and it's been really exciting to see how Celestis has evolved over the years and become this force for good in the world.
Thank you. So what's the Kerry view of the next 20 years in space, with particular focus on where will we be physically in space as humans, not just machines? And also, how do you see commerce, international programs, and the US government program interacting among themselves? It's a pretty broad question, but I'm really interested. You think a lot about the future and about humans in space. And there's a lot of forces out there that weren't there before. You know, when commercial space started really with us in the early 80s, it wasn't the giant, multi-billion-dollar fist that it is now. and so many other international programs now create autonomy and capability. And then you have our friends at NASA, who are, they're out, we're going to go to the moon next year or whatever. So, we're one of the, I'll stop by saying one of the great cool things about this program is we get a wide range of interesting people. I was thinking about today, all the folks that we've had. And one popped up in mind, a young man we had on named Dylan, who flew on the most recent, Dylan Taylor, who flew on the most recent Bezos flight. And his views of the future were heavily focused on the commercial development because that's where he exists. But Kerry, I think you have an overview of everything. So give us 5 minutes on the future.
Well, no, you are right. The private space programs have given us a game changer. One of the things that's interesting is that what's happened in space has often happened based on future vision. Elon Musk wants to go to Mars, and he will go to Mars. Jeff Bezos wanted to build a rocket company and go to space, and he is doing that now and flying commercially.
And in our era, Jerry O'Neill wanted to build solar power satellites and space colonies.
Right.
That kicked off so much activity that's even today finally coming to fruition.
And I do believe that getting back to the moon Artemis is going to be the big adventure of the next probably 5 to 8 years. The couple of things that are interesting in parallel to what was happening back in the 60s and early 70s was we had the great Soviet integral. We were vying with the Soviets for leadership. We are now vying with the Chinese for leadership. They're launching their own spacecraft. They're launching their own space stations. They have a very aggressive program. Russia is lagging behind a bit, but still there. I believe that we will see, I don't know that we'll see Mars missions in 20 years, but I believe shortly thereafter, we'll have the first forays to Mars, human missions to Mars. And those will be probably like the Apollo missions. They will, depending on the trajectory, you can either stay for about a month or about 6 weeks. About a month or 6 months, depending on how you go. And with 6 months there, you would be more like the Martian, the movie The Martian, where people would go, have a prepositioned base, and actually live. I've been working on something called Mars City, which is looking at the next generation. After you have the initial landings and after you in between building and actually colonizing, you're going to have to set up some kind of robust permanent base. What would that look like? And we call that in the Institute Mars City. We've actually developed a Mars City model, architected. You can put on your VR headset and walk through it. We've done simulations on maintenance. We've done a whole bunch of simulations on research, scientific research and engineering that would go on there. So we are doing in virtual reality what we would be doing probably about 30 years out, maybe 35, 40 years out.
So you're not buying the whole Elon Musk in 4 years, I'll have people on Mars.
No.
Okay.
No. We've got enough to do on the moon to get started and establish some things. One of the things that's interesting, I was just been working with, there's a new book out called The Burning Blue by Kevin Cook. I shouldn't be plugging his books, I should be plugging mine. But it's the Krista McAuliffe story. And Kevin and I spent a lot of time going through space shuttle systems based on my book. And to understand what Krista McAuliffe and the crew were going through in the Challenger accident. And Kevin and I have talked about this. John Young, the former head of the astronaut office and Apollo and actually Gemini, Apollo, and shuttle captain, once said that single planet species don't survive. You know, think of the dinosaurs 60 million years ago when the asteroid hit. The things were wiped out. But the question is, humans have always had this imperative. We started in apparently East Africa and literally spread out over the globe. Looking over the next hill is something that's a very human activity. But we have also changed as we've done that. People that moved to the north or to the east or to the south had adaptations, melatonin in skin, color of skin, hair colors, size, etc., that have changed us. We remain basically genetically the same, but we have genetic differences that adapt to the environment. The Inuit Eskimo versus the African tribesman versus the Scandinavian Viking, all were very, very different in physiognomy and structure. The exciting thing for me is that when we go to Mars, to retain our humanity will be very difficult, because you're in about 38% gravity. And we know now that as you go into space, particularly in microgravity or what we call zero G, your body undergoes tremendous physical stress. You have decalcification of bones. You have slight increase in height. Your eyes have issues. Your red blood cell count goes down, and we found that that's a permanent thing now. It's critically permanent. May take transfusions. The radiation environment can be deadly. Cosmic radiation without the protection of Earth's Van Allen radiation belts. So you're going to have humans evolving in very interesting ways. Life expectancy will get shorter due to cancers, which are, given your dosage, almost certain. We may get taller, we may get thinner, we may get our hearts and systems will get weaker. And as we do this, as we change, as we morph, the basic DNA structure will remain the same, but we may become a subspecies.
Well, we may also bioengineer our way around a lot of that too.
We can, but some of the stuff is just long term.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, long term stuff. So
that's a pacing item in your view.
Yes,
you really can't go and thrive in your Mars city until we figure that stuff out. And so it's not going to be the how do you get there technology. It's going to be how do humans survive there along the way and when they're there. And critically, we're not there yet.
Critically, the human factor also brings in the psychology and
of course.
Human behavior and those kinds of things. And I've been working in that area as well with our teaming programs to try to understand what drives humans, what motivates them, how do they interact with each other, how do they interpersonally communicate and manage each other, how do they work in teams successfully. We've been doing a lot of research in that area.
So that allows me to bring it back around to Celestis. You know, my contention is that we move out throughout the solar system. We're going to take our rituals, our celebrations, our memorials with us, and we're going to need to adapt those to the environment that we find ourselves in. So without dwelling on loss, it's nevertheless the case that social structures and human systems will have to adapt to how to deal with loss, both physically and in an isolated environment. And it's just a subsection of what you're saying. And it reminds me of the work we did together at Georgetown with the Institute for the Social Science Study of Space early on.
With Steve Cheston.
With Steve, and funded by NASA, where we began to rally the academic community to look at these human factors. So I hear you. Those in the worlds that I run in, those limiting factors aren't front and center.
Right.
And I think that's a good thing, because if we didn't have the people out stretching the technological capabilities, then we wouldn't have a reason to have to deal with all of these other components of life wherever we take it. And in that sense, the technology pull is useful, but in another sense, there's a lot of figuring out to do beyond just, well, we went there, we planted the flag, and we're coming back.
Right. Which is what Apollo's mission was.
Right, exactly.
Get there first.
Right. So we have a question here in the keel, which is, what is your view of the prospects for space tourism beyond the impressive Virgin Galactic and Blue Origin suborbital flights over the next decade?
I actually think that's going to be significant. The suborbital flights are obviously, I'm going to say this and then retract it. Suborbital flights are easy, but they are in the sense that, I believe that they'll start doing orbital flights with the Falcon 9s and its successor. I believe that we may have
already have Inspiration 4 has flown.
Well, yeah, and Inspiration 4, but I believe that Musk will get us around the moon.
Yeah.
When Bezos gets New Glenn up, which is a pretty big booster, he would be able to do that as well, both orbital and lunar. When you were founding Celestis many years ago, one of the things that excited me, I've lectured on things like extraterrestrial intelligence and whatnot, was the idea that when the universe formed, when the big rush, it wasn't so much a big bang as a big rush, and energy coalesced into matter, and matter became atoms, and atoms were then gravitationally pulled into stars and galaxies, and then stars inside as furnaces created more complex chemicals, carbon and hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and then they exploded and put that stuff out there, so that new stars, when they formed with planets, could have an Earth-like planet, which could have those things and could form the molecules of life. So life, the atoms, those atoms existed really almost at the beginning of the universe.
Yeah.
So when you were saying I want to fly these remains, some of the atoms that were in that person, okay, literally came at the beginning of the universe. And their DNA, when you fly the DNA, is a unique signature in all the universe.
Yeah.
So in a sense, we're making a statement as humans about our aspirations.
Yeah. I think that's at the core of why people choose Celestis. It's one of the, there's the experience, and there's the destination, and there's the I'm contributing to this great human movement off the planet feeling that so many of our clients express and definitely feel. There's another question wondering whether the tourism world will it be once and done? Oh, I did that tourist mission, and therefore will it decline over time? And I'd like to twist that just a little bit. I have an opinion, but I want to hear yours.
Well,
but I'd like to twist it just a little bit and say, what about point-to-point transportation? How do you see that? If you absolutely positively had to have the package in Tokyo yesterday, well, obviously you can do that by flying backwards across the international date line quickly enough so you can take off tomorrow and land in yesterday. But forgetting about that component, just the fact that I can get to a place, probably it's going to be in the early days off the coast and of Texas, and I can be in Tokyo Harbor in 90 minutes. Is, to me, that just seems like it's got, because it can happen, it will, because the history of transportation is always compressing the time traveled. But I wonder about things like sonic booms and is that, so will tourism kind of fade away? Is it a short-term phenomenon, or is it likely that it might just as easily evolve into everyday transportation that everybody takes? And oh God, I can't fly 13 hours to Tokyo. I need to go 90 minutes.
Yeah, when I was at NASA at Ames, which is an aeronautical center, we did look at hypersonics, and there are on the drawing boards right now and in construction hypersonic aircraft.
Right.
So these are Mach 5 and above. So you're talking about 3,000 to 5,000 miles per hour, and a trip to Tokyo is 2 hours or 3 hours, not 23 hours.
Right.
But I'd like to your original question, the original questioner talked about tourism. To me, there's a big difference between the experience of space. In other words, I want physically to go into space like William Shatner did.
Right.
And I want to experience microgravity, and I want to have that on my resume. And the cost function. As the cost comes down and it becomes more available, that will happen. One of the things that I'm very excited about, which is something that SpaceX is launching, these microsatellites to create a network of global internet that can work to low Earth orbit satellites. So you're not dependent on line of sight or towers or things like that. Microsats can also do a number of other things. Students in schools, high schools, colleges, universities, graduate schools are building CubeSats, and they're very small and you can launch them. And Celestis really benefits from this ability to send micro payloads. I mean, Celestis is basically a micro payload. You're building tiny payloads and putting the clients on those payloads. And even as we go farther out with the Enterprise mission, when you're going into interplanetary space, 250,000 miles from Earth and on a multi-billion mile journey, in solar orbit.
Yeah.
You're talking about really much greater opportunity eventually to do research and keep people involved at much lower costs. So even before the space tourism costs come down, the ability for students, for colleges, universities to do research in space, in the space environment, is significant. I was recently working with a team that's got a 3D printer on the International Space Station, and we were looking at creating lattices to build biological materials in orbit, where you can literally make new types of medicines in orbit that you can't make on Earth in terms of microgravity, and building the structures to hang them on and then bring them back to Earth. So you literally 3D print the structures. So there's a tremendous amount of research going on. It's very, very exciting.
Well, and absolutely. And that's just the stuff we know about. Right. It's truly, from my perspective, it's just mind-boggling to see, even if you measure it by the amount of announced activity versus my measure, which is, well, did it really happen? Both of those measurements are off the charts in terms of from where we were, again, 30, 40 years ago.
Well, when the shuttle first started flying, I actually designed a space station based on boosting the external tanks into orbit, which were huge, and putting them together into a space station. I did that when I was at NASA. And I'm now working on another thing. We now have the opportunity, for example, the International Space Station is a mega billion-dollar project. But given SpaceX and the costs of launches coming from $400 million to $100 to $90 million, the cost per pound is smaller, and the ability to get more structures into space is smaller. So we could actually replicate a lot of the International Space Station, which probably will be decommissioned in the next 5 to 8 years. We could build another International Space Station for probably 10% of the cost.
Well, and that's what the folks at Axiom here in Houston and a couple other people are planning to do, NanoRacks being another one.
This creates the promise of an incredibly robust space program. It's not tourism per se, but you could then think about building quarters for people to go up and experience research on the facility and make it open to a lot more scientists, engineers, and eventually people who want to go up and say, I want to go to space and I want to do an experiment in space and participate in that the opportunity, the venues will be more plentiful.
So another question rolled in here, which is viable DNA contained in cremated ashes? And the answer to that is no.
No.
But also, we have a service, Celestis DNA, that does extract DNA, ships it to a laboratory in Canada, binds it with a substrate, returns it to us, and then we launch that in titanium capsules, which is the same radiation protection that NASA uses in its spacecraft, as a way of launching your DNA any place that we go. And we have a fair number of customers that like that component of it. It's not really even a memorial service if it's for you. It's a way to symbolically travel wherever you want to go.
It's an incredible statement.
Yes. And the next step, I think, will be to take that DNA, which is digitized, and broadcast it into deep space, what I call personal, affordable teleportation. You'll be able to have personal, affordable interstellar travel of your DNA through cosmic calls, which we've also done a couple of them. So there's a lot of symbolism. There's a lot, it's interesting that DNA survives re-entry to Earth on space capsules. So it's kind of hardy. And as Kerry says, it's an amazing statement. There's a lot of people that believe life on Earth, a lot of scientists that believe life on Earth came from comets, and that in fact the DNA that created life on Earth really was interstellar in its formation anyway to begin with. So we're just taking the human, the limits of current human technology. I get into discussions with my team all the time. I said, there we go, assuming the limits of alien technologies. Oh, you can't do that because, so it's an interesting business.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up because the 20 basic amino acids that form the basic proteins of RNA and DNA are all found throughout space. We get meteorites, carbonaceous meteorites, on which all 20 of these amino acids are found. Right. They apparently can form in space. They can form on planets. They can form in comets. And so whether comets actually salted the Earth with these compounds or they evolved here through other processes,
right,
heat, light, ultraviolet, given 3.5 billion years to fool around in the primordial soup, and get it. Now, let me caution, that saying that you have these amino acids and they can form the proteins is like me giving you some bricks and say, go build the Taj Mahal. I mean, there's a lot of steps in between.
There you go, assuming the limits of alien technology.
There you go. So, but it's wonderful to think about.
Yeah, it's cool. I love to.
One of my dear friends who is now gone on is Eric Burgess, who was a co-founder of the British Interplanetary Society with Arthur Clarke. Eric was one of the ones who went to Carl Sagan and put the plaque on the Pioneer. When I was at Ames, we were flying Pioneer out of the solar system. And that plaque had a picture of a man and a woman, and it had a map of the solar system, and it had a map of, and it had DNA signatures on it. That's like on the Voyagers, we had the record with sounds of Earth. So the ability for an individual to put their DNA out digitally is really the next generation. This is something that is.
Here we are.
It's the first wave.
Yeah,
it is the first wave.
We have a Aurora question that I want to get to. Cheryl, you asked what the last day to pre-register for the Aurora flight is, and I need to draw a distinction. The last day to purchase a slot on the Aurora flight for a loved one or for your own DNA is today. So if you're looking to do that, you need to just call our office tomorrow and we'll help you out if that's what you're looking for. If your question is, when is the last pre-register, we're asking people who intend to attend our launch to pre-register. And that pre-registration will be open basically until registration opens. And if you want to come, we'd like you to pre-register, but you must register. And the registration process will start February 15th, I believe. It might be the 16th. But so that means the last day to pre-register is February 14th. But don't despair. If you don't we'd love to have you pre-register. It's basically designed to help us plan. If you don't, you can then register from basically February 15th through I believe March 15th, maybe March 30th to attend. And that will involve making commitments and securing transportation and stuff like that. If that doesn't answer your question, just call Celestis or send in a contact form tomorrow and we'll be happy to walk you through it. I tried to be clear, but I know there's a lot of registration, pre-registration, launch, tour. There's a lot of stuff in the mix. And we want to be sure that we're answering your question. Thank you for providing it. Kerry, the hour, and Mark. Mark, you were amazingly silent today, possibly because I monopolized all of it.
I was
having a discussion with my dear friend.
No, I was fascinated and intrigued by both of you because every time that Charlie brings literally a friend onto our show, we're boggled by how many famous friends Charlie actually has, and when they do show up, we're dumbfounded. It's like, holy mackerel, Charlie does have famous friends, but we're getting close to our hour. But before we do that, I wanted to talk to Kerry, Dr. Joels, if I may say. You gave me 3 images. If you could speak about them real quick, I'd like to throw them up on the screen before we leave here. So let's tell us about this one here.
This is an actual architectural model of Mars City with its various components. The left side of the model are habitation modules. The right side is the power supply, the photovoltaic array. Coming out of the middle, which is the mission control, is that dome in the middle, are garages for rovers and places to put up spacesuits and all sorts of logistical things. And then off to the right between the power photovoltaic array is your habitability. That's where you have your food growing. That's where you have your various labs, geolab, biolab, chem lab, and then your common spaces. You do have to have open spaces. People don't want to be claustrophobic. You can't just walk outside on Mars. It's carbon dioxide and it's 1/100th of our atmosphere. So that's a rendering of Mars City. We actually have it. If you go to the next slide, we've actually developed Mars City in 3D. You can put on an Oculus and walk through Mars City. And we use that for testing. We are working on how do you keep something like this operating? How do you maintain it? We've worked with various universities on what would be, and with the International Space Station data on what would you need to actually maintain a base like this. You know, the article I did that you saw in at Astra, you know, how many astronauts does it take to change a light bulb is literally true. And you have to know how long is it going to take me to walk from the repair center with the light bulb to this particular place, put it in and get back. How many things can I actually schedule? What types of maintenance would I have to do? So that's part of our simulation and our research. And the last one is kind of fun. This is the guts of Mars City. This is how you build it up in terms of architecture. I know Mark is familiar with this. And the various labs, how you scale it and how you create the 3D renderings so that we can actually do experiments and see and understand before we build the thing what it's going to be like and what it's going to and how we're going to try to operate it. So this is
Barb comments that it looks a lot like McMurdo Station.
Yeah, it actually does. One of the reasons you have different Barb, you're right. One of the reasons that you have different modules is for survivability. If something happens in one module, you've got backup modules. I know you probably saw this in the movie The Martian. You know, they had one module was collapsed, and he had a backup module that he could go into and live in. So modularity is a survival issue, and that's why you don't have one big room. If you lose the room, you're gone. So that it does look like that, and they do the same thing in McMurdo Sound. They fractionalize the mission, and they basically block it out so that there are different things. The space station does the same thing, the International Space Station, and that's also for variety. You can go to a different area and do something different or be in a different space. There's a psychological thing with that goes on with that.
Is there, I'm sorry, Charlie, is there a cross-section of the International Space Station somewhere online that we can find? Because I don't.
All the diagrams are on there, and there's 3D models you can rotate and play with on your screen. NASA has done all of that. We actually got the maintenance plan, 6-month maintenance plan for the space station when we were doing our maintenance simulations for Mars City to see what breaks. Do you have to fix the toilet? Do you get water leaks? Do you get, what about food production? We've done a whole thing on food production. 3D printing is now part of our. So if you have to make a part for a toilet, you can't go to you're on Mars. The nearest Home Depot is 43 million miles away. So you're making that part. Okay.
I was just thinking of one of the recent tourist flights that went up, and it would have been a hell of a wait to get to a bathroom if you were headed to the ISS.
Yes.
That's all I had to say, Charlie, before we sign off.
Well, great session. We could probably do it for another session fairly soon. There's lots to talk about. You've got an interesting perspective, and you bring the right sense of imagination, but also grounded in reality, which is really important in the business we find ourselves in. So we appreciate it.
Who knew 40 years ago when we were all, the young Turks and fanning out across the globe, that we would be engaged in these kinds of activities, these creativity.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, with all of these advancements coming up, it's actually coming up a lot sooner than I'd realized initially. The fact that you can in fact put DNA up in space on one of our flights. Nobody really thought about that, and we had mentioned that you can yourself via DNA go up with any loved one who had wanted to be launched into space, and we do the same with our pet service as well, Charles, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
Um, you know, in one sense, your question is who would have ever thought, but in another sense, we knew we were going to be on it. We
yeah,
didn't know exactly where the vector would take us,
yeah,
but even back then, and I'm sure you felt the same way, we were part of the committed off-earthers, I guess I'd say. And it's been a fun ride. And now it's great that we're able to share it and we're able to make it into such a meaningful service and fulfilling and compelling. And, it's, we see it every time. You don't go to very many memorial services where you see the kind of high-fiving and cheering that our folks engage in at liftoff. And that
Launches are emotional.
yeah,
They have always been emotional, and that's something.
yeah. I'm sorry.
No, go
Yeah,
ahead.
it's one of the most emotional things I've ever seen in my life, and those that are going to be joining us pretty soon, you have a lot to look forward to. We understand that the mourning process is sometimes longer than others, sometimes shorter than others, but we add to the excitement of fulfilling your loved one's dreams. So it's a celebratory kind of experience for us there, and we enjoy being a witness to it. So,
well,
oh, that's a good.
absolutely. And thank you, Joe, for the compliment. And there's some exciting stuff going on the Enterprise flight. I worked really diligently to have it ready for announcing tonight, but I didn't get it done. But that doesn't mean, and that just means we didn't prepare yet for the announcement. We have some really cool stuff to share, and it's going to be an amazing mission. It will be our first Voyager mission. And as I've said, it allows me to fulfill a personal promise I made to Major Barrett Roddenberry when she agreed to let me fly her husband's remains on our first flight, which was, I'll make you a deal, Charlie. When the time comes, fly the two of us together on the mission you have that goes the farthest out. So we've been waiting. And we're really, again, to me, it would just be, okay, check that one. I got that one done. And I'm looking forward to it as well, Joe. And I'm glad to hear from you. We're going to do a great job for your family member. And hopefully you'll be able to attend the launch because it'll be a pretty amazing event. All right, we've run over time, which is always a sign of either my excess wordiness or the coolness of the conversation, and I'm going to vote that it was the latter tonight. Thank you, Kerry. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Kerry.
Everybody, all Celestis fans and families.
Yeah. Once again, guys, we are on Facebook as well, and you can rewatch this session as many times as you want, especially if you didn't see the beginning of it where we did all of our mission statements or our updates on our missions. So please tune in. Go to our website, go to our Facebook page, email us, talk to us, ask any question imaginable. It's very, very important that you get registered for our upcoming Aurora Flight in April in New Mexico. So if you haven't done that, if you don't know how to do that, pick up the phone or hit email real quick to Celestis, and we will fill you in. But please, this is going to be a very busy year, So just catch up on everything. Let's get on the stick because we're up and running now. Dr. Joels, Kerry, you were fantastic. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mark. Great to be with you.
Yeah, and Charles, we will be doing probably another broadcast in another 30 days or so, correct?
Yep.
All right. Well, everyone, thank you so much. We will be talking to you once again, but
No,
go ahead, Kerry.
it's this one.
You're talking to the wrong guy, buddy.
Yeah, there we go. I can't do it left-handed.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm ambidextrous.
Yeah.
Oh, show off. Okay,
Yeah.
I get it.
All right.
Everyone,
Take care,
be long and
everybody.
prosper. Take care and good night.
This is the launch conductor in mission control. We pause at this moment in our countdown to remember and honor the lives of each of the participants on the Celestis Memorial Space Flight. Their presence on this flight signifies a commitment to the opening of the space frontier shared by all of us. We wish the friends and families present today and all those who are with us in spirit all over the world Godspeed, good luck, and our thanks for allowing us to share this very personal time with you today. Elsie out. 5 vehicles armed. 3, 2, 1, fire.